Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming, even though it's already quite late today and you're probably after many sessions or workshops. So thanks again. I'm Milko Slenga and I work at Microsoft in Vedbeck, at Microsoft Development Center Copenhagen. And this is Tomasz.
Yeah, I'm Tomasz Truszkiewicz. I'm in as well infrastructure team at CC.
Okay, so thank you again for coming and welcome to about NAV deployment. So there are sessions when we cover the deployment to Azure, try to cover both, as probably some of you, at least are interested only in deploying on-prem, and maybe if you didn't even look at our deployment tools we added in the SharePoint for 2013. Try to prove that they're also useful for on-prem deployment. Hopefully will convince you to give it a shot. So we'll start with a short introduction to PowerShell. We could see during the workshops and in general, while to people that some of you did before or didn't use it before. And we think that it's quite important to spend 5-10 minutes to give you just a short overview about what the PowerShell is about, how it's structured in terms of the commands, modules, providers, etc. It will make it easier for you to understand the content presentation, so please bear with us for those 10 minutes. If you already know PowerShell, let's get everyone up to speed. So we'll start with this short description of Windows PowerShell. Then we'll present briefly our toolset. Tomorrow there will be, I think, the presentation also covering this extent. Still, we'll try to present the tools. As I said, probably some of you didn't see before, so it's also important. And afterwards, we'll try to show you how to integrate those tools with existing .NET applications. As you know, at least that's my impression when I tell someone at the PowerShell, that person understands that more or less like a new command prompt. And that's it. But basically, we want to also show you how you can take our tools, our scripts, our scripted commandlets, or advanced functions, the official name, and how to integrate it with your existing tools, or at least to give you a little show of capabilities related to this. Afterwards, we'll also show you how to use our tools together with other Microsoft products, the whole Microsoft stack related to server solutions. And afterwards, we'll tell you a few words about our projects. So me and Tomasz worked on two projects related to deploying quite big number of Azure VMs with NAV, quite rapid deployment, let's say 1,000 VMs per day, that kind of volume. So we have a few tips and tricks and we want to share our experience with you. So that will be the last part of our presentation, after which will come with Q&A. So Windows PowerShell, guys, when you look at that and when you look at something which has been introduced years ago, you probably don't see a difference. So I'll try to explain you the main benefits of using Windows PowerShell. I'll also try to explain what are the basic components like module, like commandlet, like provider. So later on when we explain how our tooling, which by the way is based on all, is constructed and how it works, it will make it much easier for you to understand. So Windows PowerShell really work on strings. So as you remember, in all good days, you could pass the string as a parameter for the method or the function, let's say CD, and it treated this as a string. In PowerShell, you're in a completely new, everything is on .NET. So any input data you provide is treated as a full .NET object. It's never just a string. I'll demonstrate to you a few examples about this right now. Before I show it to you, I want to explain also how the PowerShell is constructed. So it comes with a set of commandlets. A commandlet can be treated like a separate function, independent on others or dependent on others. And for instance, CD from old good CMD times is called right now get-location and provided under the alias CD, so it's easier for you to use it. So a single command you execute called commandlet in a new Windows PowerShell. And another benefit of the PowerShell is the common way of inserting commands, parameters, passing values between parameters in the pipeline. If you created some command prompt tool, it was up to you to define how you put the entry data. You probably used something like /path or -path, and it might didn't work. So in PowerShell, it's all diced. So maybe let's do a little demo. It won't take long. I just want to give you an overview of those main benefits I just mentioned. So I'll quit the presentation. Okay, guys. So PowerShell, this is the actual. Yes, sorry. Actually, something's.
No.
Drag it to the other side.
No, that's not to make click it.
No, nothing.
Okay. I won't see anything on my screen, so understand me. I'll hit the phone. Connection between PowerShell and .NET and a few other things. Let's start with PowerShell and .NET. Well, I'm sure after this presentation, all of you will think about how can I move all my .NET applications to Windows PowerShell right now. So let's give you a small tip and trick about this. So if you want to use existing .NET, quite a nice relation between Windows PowerShell.NET, you can actually embed the C# code into your script, and then it will be available for you on the runtime. So here you can see a simple code. Do you think it does it exposes the publication which accepts the name, and the only thing it will do, it will format it so it looks like a greeting, hello, Kamil, hello, and it will to you on the screen. So in the source code, afterwards I add it to the current runtime. I specify it's a C#. You can also use JavaScript or Visual. Then I create of that type, so you can clearly see this is .NET, and then I invoke the function. So if I execute, see it completed successfully. So this is the first demo, and let's get back to the presentation. And actually, how those commands are built, are they grouped tooling? Well, commandlet is the function developed in C#. It can be also scripted as function. It's a normal script which, after loaded into the PowerShell environment, is treated as a normal commandlet. So it behaves the same way. So you can choose either one way or the other way of adding new functionality. If you don't change the or you want to per IP and keep it as a library, let's say the dynamic library, Visual Studio, and you will call the .NET. However, if you want to make people change your script, at least so see what happens step after step, use the scripted command. I'll present it to you, the difference between them. So let's hopefully successfully this. So this is of course one way of making like half PowerShell scripted. Definitely it's the good way to go. Alternative, introducing exactly the same functionality in pure PowerShell. We'll be creating a function, call it scripted commandlet from now on moving forward. So as you can see, it's exactly the same. It accepts some parameter. The right returns the object to the pipe. So if I load it, I can module. It becomes available momentarily as well. Send, great. As you can see, the same behavior. Different ways. It is also then stored in two different ways. If you create a commandlet as a scripted function with all his friends at the same time, and that's where modules come. So in our case, in this set, I could just parse it immediately, or I could load it through the module. So this is an example of PN extension, and it contains all that it should import. So the moment you go to your PowerShell and you execute import module, and you will specify the full path to that file, it will load all the files within. And that's actually also using tools. A big part of the tools are functions, so as to separate functionality, and we also rate the command in terms of on which side they're executed. Whether they're executed on your machine or they're sent to the VM during process, but we'll reach that description. So to summarize, scripted commandlet and implementation, all text files, different text to maintain, really easy to change the moment you start tools. And if you see that those tools are scripts, you can modify them and rerun the scripts. It's quite nice. And another type one. And as for the scripted commandlets, you have another txt file with extension ps module. For the DLL will contain multiple commandlets. I'm sorry. So if the PowerShell will load the DLL, it will look for all the public classes which inherits from the command class from the PowerShell SDK, and it will load all those commandlets within your environment. So this other means the commandlets if they're in a managed form. I hope I gave you a little brief on the Windows PowerShell, and I hope it's more clear how the whole thing works. Yes, please go ahead. I think that's yeah. Okay, so the question is whether I need to use GAG to make my commandlet globally accessible through import module. So actually, the PowerShell uses some different, there are modules and there are snappings. So you can install your commandlet asset of the snap. What it does, it creates additional entries in Windows registry, the full paths pointing to your DLL. It has nothing GAG. And then what happens is whenever you use, instead of import module, add -ps snapping commandlet, you will find just that particular name to the DLL, and thanks to the registry entries, it will be found automatically. So that's the recommended way. Of course, different ways, this is one of those. The other one is some location which contains all the modules. You can add your own, and then in the startup it will be loaded. Okay, so let's switch to the main topic, our deployment tools. We gave an introduction on Windows PowerShell. Now we'll try to explain you what were the challenges we could foresee for people trying to go to Cloud V, trying to deploy. Well, the first problem we've seen was that Azure is really a new thing for some of you. So it would be really nice to kind of hide the like all new words like storage account, like endpoints, like virtual nets in the Azure world. So that was the first like criteria for success and one of the goals for the project. Try to make it easier for you to switch to Azure. The second was to provide some end-to-end scripts. So basically by using our tools and having just NAV DVD on your drive, after running our scripts, after 40 minutes, you end up with a full running NAV deployment with click once, giving copy of remote installation of Windows client, with the web client, with the endpoints for the services, with everything fully running with just one button. So that was the goal. And of course, we had to like solve some problems, for instance, making completely UI-less, like making it in the user profile being loaded at the same time. Because, for instance, if you spin up a new VM and you in with the user, it doesn't have the user profile, it does those specific user folders. So some of MSIs or some of installers don't have the situation too well. And we wanted to make it really smart. You just spin up a new machine from sysprept image and you run our script. Definitely, it's also time consuming to volume. So of course you don't want to make 50 per VM. You want to have a process, just iterate, invoke some function 50 times and done specific configuration on 50 VMs. So that goes to make it generic, so it suits needs of multiples of deployment, and to make it possible to run multiple times without within a subscription. So Microsoft Dynamics NAV provides, they're available on the NVD in Windows PowerShell folder, in a subfolder. Feel free to take a look after the presentation. Benefits of using them. As I said, Windows Azure, don't worry anymore in the beginning. Of course, as you move forward, we'll take a look at the description of how we do things. You will take a look at scripts to understand the process fully. If you want to host hundreds of VMs, you need to understand the process, but in the first run, it will be much easier. All of the commandlets we implemented are building blocks. So on one of the next slides, I'll present to you the structure. What we started with were building blocks to allow operations necessary for deployment complete, and then we're going up the tree, trying to all of those guys in higher levels. Those building blocks can be used by NView. You can modify them. You can use it as on-prem as well. And because most of them are scripted advanced functions, you can modify the content. As if you want to, by default, have two different NAVs instead of feel to add one line and you end up with two instances. I think more difficult than this. It's automatable. As I said, you have just NAV DVD, you execute script, everything is done for you. And it's really, we a lot of verbose messages. So I think you end up with 15,000 of descriptions of options, which I really see that it's really detailed. And the user interface will show you later in the presentation how kind of a front end, because I can't believe most of you will decide to stay in that PowerShell ICE for the time. You will probably try to integrate that PowerShell something more. It might be some AS.NET website, it might be some .NET application, that's probably what you, or use System Center together with our scripts. We'll cover it later. Yeah. So we'll try briefly of link. So everything starts from the top element. So at the top you can see one VM example scripts are not commandlets. So I can present it to you actually. There's nothing better than showing how it actually looks. So let's try to open it. This is our tooling. And just so you only, it's not just the scripts we created. There are some parts of the product changed to allow this fully automated process. So even though in that folder you will see a set of scripts, there are changes in setup, there are new commandlets introduced in product, there are several changes which made it actually possible. Now let's take a look at the scripts. So this is example 1 VM. This is the script which, if you click the button over there, entering appropriate value into the file, you will get a single, which means you will have SQL Server, NAV server, and the whole pack on one VM, which is suitable for demo purposes. Definitely not something you might consider a huge deployment. For instance, if you have some license for SQL, you might want to have a single SQL server and hosting database on that. And that's when you use two VM setup. So those files differ in a way that in example 1, we deploy everything on the same machine. The 2 VM, there's a one machine which has the server and the second which contains the presentation. So you can see this is the script at the top, and go lower, you can see that it's like a tree structure. In the bottom, you will find something like add window wall, port rule, or other similar really basic operations. And those are the building blocks you can use as you wish. Then above you will see also commandlets, and those commandlets will use the functionality of those smaller pieces. And it will go all the way up to the example file. So the idea to create really small pieces at the bottom, which would grow together with each other, quite a nice functionality. So module structured, as I explained to you in the beginning, commandlets are included in the PowerShell module. And we deploy NAV. What happens basically is that to create a new, and then of course, how does it happen that we use operations on those remote VMs? Never open remote desktop. So that was another criteria. No remote desktop, one click of the button on the mouse. And what we use is the PowerShell remote connection and PowerShell remoting. Basically, we have an endpoint, the VM, so we open session. We transfer some of those scripts. We created some of those commandlets together with NAVD, together with the prerequisites. And then basically we use that script to load the module already on the remote VM and use the commandlets on the remote VM to operations. So we had to make it nice and clean. We wanted to have a clear separation between operations you execute on that while deploying a VM to the cloud and on the remote VM. So that's why you can see that we have all scripts. This is something I just showed you, example 1 VM executing end-to-end deployment. The next module is NAV administration, and that module is used only on the VM. So anytime we open to the remote VM, we update the content of of that pack. So basically we open a session, and then the whole NAV admin module lands on the remote machine. So that module it will be on the never on the client from which you deploy NAV. The next module contains functionality on your machine. So that might be something like, let's say, creating a certificate. For instance, specify a certificate the web client to provide SSL will generate it for you. And on your machine, there's no reason to do it remotely. So we'll create it and we'll. So this is the division Then the next file is the node administrator. It's not really maybe too meaningful name, but if you look at the, let's get back to that slide over here. The second level, you can see the scripts kind of differ from those building. They start with how to. This is even not recommended name for the commandlets, and we use those on purpose. So those are building blocks. And there you can see by their names that the first one is create Azure VM, the next one is upload files to VM, the one is NAV, and the last one is add new. So those are like components which are executed on your machine, but like building really like the highest level blocks in the script. And as you saw in example file, I'll get back for a second. Only those scripts executed. So we create the Azure VM, and then later on we files. Later on we prepare the certificate. We install. So those are like, if you look at our scripts and you look at the link, you start from those. It gives you a nice overview. You go deeper and understand the process fully thanks to this. Let me switch back. I mean forward. And the last one, the last citizen in already, those are our management commandlets. Set server instance and other commandlets used while administrating NAV installations. As I said, we introduced some changes, new NAV company or others which we had to introduce to make the process fully automated are in the manage and are in the DLL. So that's also a kind of a part of the deployment tools. And I already mentioned that we support two different changes. In the first one, we have a single VM to host link together with the database, so you will have SQL Server. And of course, if you plan to use some sizes of VMs on cloud, like small size having 1.75 gigabytes of memory, this is probably not something for you. On the other, if you want to present some try NAVs with SQL Express and NAV, and I mean performance might not be the biggest concern for you, then this is something you will consider. So everything on a single box or two box configuration. So first run you create off, and then another VMs. So you can basically in the second deployment you will create another NAV2 instance which to a running machine with SQL Server. So basically in that topology you host a SQL host shared between multiple instances hosting NAV. And now, well, we are talking about Azure all the time here, and I mean, I promised you that we'll think on-prem. So what this is about. So this is the process I want to explain. When we first create the VM, then we upload files, operations. What happens on-prem? Actually, on-prem, that process won't really differ, right? I mean, you'll upload, you will still install the product. What will difference is how you create the VM. So this is the only piece which differs. And in terms of, you will tell Azure, please give me new. Use this new shiny Windows 2012 with SQL Server Azure Gallery image. And that, of course, ported so easily, right? Because we have REST API that web service Azure exposes in the first place, at least fully support, which later on. So what I demonstrate to you is that how to use our scripts on-prem and whether they actually. So you can see I out the first element. So the only thing to demonstrate and to prove that I'm actually working against the VM will use high and to make to start for the first time a new machine. So let's see how this. Okay, so this is my Hyper-V. This is. I'll boot it up, and you will see that means it's been hibernated via server, as I'll be presenting a single VM deployment on-prem. Let it start, and we'll get back here. You will see that it will ask me for the product key, which I don't remember, and other things. Hopefully will pass. Meanwhile, I'll prepare my PowerShell environment just to save some time. Okay, guys. What we have over here, getting ready. I said, right, Intel release DVD, so let's take a look at it. Prove that I really didn't reach much, if anything. So there's example 1 VM, and as you can see, it executes all those operations one after another, and you can see that exactly here. Oops, sorry. Right, so I'm up the files. There's missing how to create Azure VM, and that's because I'll start to prove my point that it's I'm installing certificate, NAV, I'm adding an instance. Certifications, they're pointing to exactly the same files as you would use on Azure. The only difference is there's no how to create Azure VM. Yes, but there are a few things here. Why do I need them? Is what I copy pasted here is the content of the setting file. So if you deploy in Azure, we separate from the main. So you have a separate file which contains all those settings which are commented out in the by default. But let's uncomment them so we see that this is exactly the same. So of course we don't have Azure subscription, so that setting won't be copied. But things like domain name, admin username, you will find them here. It's just for simplicity to show you every smaller amount. So let's get back to our VM. You can see it's a clean VM. It asks me for the product key. Let's keep it. Accept the license terms. Let's use really complex password. Test.1234.
It's his favorite password.
Yes. Okay, it's finalizing, and I'm not logging in. Right, so this is a fresh start. Use System Center, probably you will provide those product gateway. Also, you will automatically join the domain. But I'm logging in, so I'm not making any modifications on the VM. And what I have, you can see I also have a few more VMs. It's actually quite powerful notebook. I have the domain controller, where I'm not the functional domain controller. However, I'm using the DHCP server, so I know the IP of that new machine immediately, so I know it's 10.0.0.2. Let's get back to the scripts. I already set it up as the validity. I think for that MAC address I set up to 8 days just to ensure it doesn't change. And of course the port is as usual, my plus settings. Let's change the view and let's start it. Well, access denied, and that's because I'm not running as admin. So let's run as admin. Sorry for delay. You can see I'll be using the DVD, and let's load management DLL. I have the NAV installed on that, and it's exactly the same file. Give it a shot. As you can see now, it's transferring some of the scripts to the, and I hope it's okay with you that I'll get back to that machine. What I would like to log in. So actually you can see more and more items popping up on the hard drive in the task is run against on-prem. So there is no whatsoever. So let's get here. And just to really prove that it works, we'll just keep, it takes around half an hour, so during the, we'll try to access the click one. But before we finish this demo, I'd like to show you that every remote folder. When the NAV DVD is being transferred on the wire through PowerShell session, no network shares, no RDP, no problem. Communication with the VM is protected using the SSL. So it's all safe. And as I mentioned, NAV administration containing only the modules executed on the VM side. So let's keep it as it is. Let's continue the transferring files, installing NAV, all the operations necessary for the deployment. I hope I'll prove with my colleague that actually makes those scriptable with on-prem. I mean, imagine deploying it and where you can just call hours with different configurations. That's quite powerful. We'll get back, as I said, once in a while to check the progress. And with deployments, I bet you're also interested in prem, but of Azure, to check those 2 videos, I believe they're on YouTube, publicly available. Please take a look if you're interested. So let's sum it up. So we sell instance deployment and multiple instance deployment to meet all your needs. However, you can also install NAV on one machine. You can change the config file. So, for instance, you have a web client, a different server. Of course, that would require more changes. but it's doable. You have all the building blocks, so you can play with all the pieces. Okay, let's switch to the next part of the presentation. Well, will I, my whole life, only see the PowerShell ICE if I'll go with what those guys are saying? There are assumptions. So you can keep using the ICE, load the script, press F5, see the progress. It's perfectly fine. However, if you have other tools and you want to integrate it in some meaningful, you will probably try to understand whether it's possible to integrate it with .NET applications or other Microsoft products. So the first options, PowerShell, ICE, executing the script manually. Tomasz, if you could tell something about the system center.
You can leverage System Center for virtual machine management as well as Orchestrator, where you can create a runbook. Basically, you can create a runbook that will have a logic workflow set up for deploying. So basically, executing PowerShell scripts.
Yeah, and that is something you might find useful because in case of error, the script must be, if you rate those how-to pieces, and we'll make some workflow if something happened, do some cleanup, rerun. That might be something you merge.
It's nice event logging and everything.
Yes. Yep. And then there is something which we will try to show you if there will be time. If not, we'll mention it briefly right now. So probably you don't want to have deployment engine machine as you have, let's say, the front-end website. Of course, you want to have some deployment. And what is actually, and this is the SPF and the System Center team is using, you can expose the Power functionality as the web service. I can take those scripts and I can expose them as OData. And then on another host, I can use the OData and introduce functionality in the front end. And it, as I use in another products, we won't have time to present to you like end-to-end how we had that ready, but probably no time. How to use our scripts. If there will be time, we'll at least show you how the System Center configuration looks like. And you will like that behind services which are exposed for the front ends for System Centers, there is scripted commandlet, advanced functions beneath the scenes. I will have time to show it to you. And the last but not the .NET, what you can do, you PowerShell SDK. So if you have existing application, you can use that SDK to run a particular commandlet or script. Well, it wouldn't look to without some demo. So what we would like to present how in 10-15 minutes simple ASP.NET website in which you will be able to put some settings in and there one click to some front end. And of course the demo is not intended to show you how the deployment portal or to PowerPoint that you can actually call PowerShell from within .NET. So where is the created ASP MVC4 framework application? Clicking on project and select more. It's available from MSDN. It gives you in an MVC way a ready website, get it out of the box. We use it so we don't spend time on those pieces like user authentication and separation between model view controller. The code, guys, so let's start. So I'll try to make it quick. That's why I have some code snippets here. I bet you're not so much interested into elements like models. You're more interested into PowerShell. So let's try to do this fast. So I'll start by adding a new model. So store information about the DB and also in the database. So I'll create a new class, deployment models. And then I have a few items here. Sorry, I'm a little just because I see it on the side screen. Okay. So the first class is for storing the details about the deployment. As you can see, like objects like properties as service name, password, and AV admin password. And as you can see by the we decided to make available for the end user. So what we'll do later in the process, we'll go to our set, we'll comment those values so they're provided on the runtime by the user. one. Okay, we'll resolve those later binaries. Then the next one is the class representing the. And as I said, the only thing we'll use in here will name admin toward and the last one. Sorry, that's the first one. We have all the modules in place.
This model,
Exactly. Of course, we need to present some result to the user, so when the operation completes, we'll have a nice state with of the deployment which just succeeded. We still have some problems here. I think this is some missing library. Let's see. I might first, so just started. Let's try to create a new one. It will actually prove that the project is untouched. Create an internet application. Again. Perfect. Oops. Okay. I'll unload as we use it together with this one. Actually, that's the one I just using. So that's application number. So far, so good. As you can see, we need 3 types of information stored on time. The information user will create a new VM, the information about completed deployment, and the information about the operation, whether it succeeded, whether it failed, so in appropriate form. Okay, let's compile more so we see issues. And this is the main piece now. We'll add the possible for running the PowerShell itself. Before we do the PowerShell SDK, and as this is Windows and I have PowerShell on it, I can find it quite easily. Won't optimize the references, just to be on the safe side. Let's introduce a new folder. PowerShell. And let's do class with our deployer. Let's call it NAV deployer. So that class will be responsible for calling for invocation of the deployment. This is really simplistic example. We had kind of errors, but there is no customization available. You can modify the number of settings you change to prove the point that you can actually use it to PowerShell.
Yeah, ideally this deployer should be like on the service side, so connects with using WCSys service. And
yes. Yes, so of course you don't want on the same process to have the front end, you don't even probably want it on the same box. Management could be one of the ways. Simple WCF service implementation would be another one. Here, just for demo purpose, much fast presented as this configuration. So already see those models being used. We have some references to the CE. Sorry. So let's resolve that. And IO probably. Yep. Let's try to compile. This is the main, try to explain you what here. It's actually straightforward. Please let me have any questions. What we do here, of course, create an object which will store the result of the deployment. We create a pipe. So something I forgot to mention, when you think of how PowerShell execute the commands, what you can do, you can invoke one command commandlet, and what it will do, it will return a .NET object. In a normal, let's say this is scripting language, you would, let's say there's an array of, and then on each string you treat it as a file path and you want to remove files. What you would do normally for loop and you would iterate through the objects. However, in PowerShell you have a pipeline. So let's say you have a command which returns you an array representing the file paths. You can directly with a symbol of piping. I might show it to you. That's always better. We see the deployment, it still continues. Better, don't stop it. Let's go to some other place. For instance, one telling you about is you can get item. Let's see it. Well, let's maybe clean the screen first. Probably not the best place to look at that. So we see more than one. Okay. And if it had multiple items, you would iterate through it through the for loop. In here, you can pull off piping to the next commandlet in the pipeline to, for instance, display to the user. And as you can see, instead of returned, it was not returned to the standard output, it's passed to another commandlet. The other commandlet expected a string object, so because it was string, you can see that that commandlet returns some complex .NET object. What it did, it invoked toString function and returned the result to the user. It's quite powerful. This is something we use. So we create the run space. And now, as I said, we'll decide right now what settings will be customizable, can be changed for site. In our case, we'll make the name of the VM, the password for the administrator, and the first super user in NAV system to be chosen on the website. Of course, you can extend that list if you want. Right now, those settings, and again, I won't modify anything in this window. Let's use another one. So let's open completely clean. I need two scripts which I'll be using in my project and make customizations. Same folder DVD. And as you can see, I already entered some value. I won't go through what is the remaining. I just want to show you that some of those will be modified along the way. To make sure that provided and there's some validation in our tooling, we'll comment them out. So we actually ensure they're provided in the process. And then maybe it will be much faster if I'll for a password. We comment it out. Oh, password. I think we're good. So let's get point. So what happens right now is that we'll be loading example one VM file. And along the process, the set as well, the values for those particular settings will be missing. Why we need to define them, so before the file, we'll be specifying it. If you decide not to comment them out, you should do it after you execute the script so they're not overwritten. In case we comment out, so safe to do it here. We create line to you gently, and we load the file. Specify what kind of script should be read. I add it to the pipeline as a next command to put it, and I basically pass the whole source code. And I use the pipeline functionality because look at ours. This is just an example, right? So what we do, turn not perfectly. Let me show you. NAV server instance. As you can see here, we don't return perfect, really easily to be used in other tools. It can be easily changed. I can create a new object here. Then set variables, set the properties on the object equal to those information like URL or other properties. However, unchanged. So what I do, in the code, I pipe it to out. It will wait for all those strings to come in the pipeline, and it will construct one string, and it will return it as the object, the demo. And exception handling in case of errors. I'll skip it for now because I'm running a little bit out of time. Then we need the and contributing. We'll be using the deployer class I just created to deploy new VMs. Okay. Oops. Put some attributes on class to ensure that the user must he's using our functionality. Then we will ensure that the database link the users will also get it if it were. The first controller will be used. Just a second, please. Let me resolve this reference. That method will display existing deploy. And as you can see, there's a problem is that I still haven't updated my database. So with the new class, and then the entity framework creates the tables in the SQL Server to store the deployments. We'll do it in a second. We'll keep it as complete implementation controllers. The next controller method for calling our deployer. So the moment on the web click create, after providing all the details stored in the request, it will deployer. It will pass by the user together with the unique ID. So actually we know later on what kind of deployments to do each of the users. So you don't friends deployments. Then there will be another control which will be used just to display the view.
Syntax error.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. The next one will be invoked on the to get the content for the view when the operation completes, where you will get info succeeded. And I think the last one is the full class, which we don't need. Okay. Let's call the content. See, now it would be good to fix the problem with the database. Start saving the content. So the view as it's required. So the first one will be index, and that index will show you all the available. You can see I can choose the prop class as a model for the view. And here I'll state available deployments. Nothing more content. And of course I need to create it in an appropriate folder. So the MVC framework will
with the routing.
So let's deployment. First one, of course, we need more. We need the one for a new VM. So another, and let's call it create. And of course, it will accept the request from the user. So deployment request model has scaffold form of create template. Those Windows background, this is the process of deployment in it. Create. Now we tell the user that the operation completed or did. So we'll have another read it, and because it's a result, we'll use the model for the result. Do we need something more? We need one more thing here. Sorry. We need another create. Okay, create is already completed. We can see it here. Sorry for that. Okay. Let's compile it.
No, if they add extend data, user context
Yes.
with items.
With PowerShell, we have modules.
It's an accounts model.
And as you can see, it's profiles. Apart from this, we want in the database to store the information about the deployments. And those are the deployments we other classes. Let's to compile. Okay, succeeded. Here, you can see that there are no deployments really, right? I mean, we can see contact, about, and home. So let's get back for a second and let's modify the layout of the application. So I think the view start is not. Let me check. It was layout. Shared layout. Let's find the menu. Let's add the appropriate item. So we'll add a new link. And index the action, which means that by default deploying existing commandlets, the existing deployments whenever you click. And let's close the one. Let's give it another try. Meanwhile, I'll double check.
And have this.
So I need to register.
Action for deployment.
Let's see. Yes, create. And I can see there's still an LC.
Are you starting the right?
Excuse me?
Are you starting the right web application?
Let's see. Or maybe cache. Let's look at the code.
And this is default, huh? Sure. Yeah.
Actually, not point. It's prem.
Yeah. Okay. I think you are.
Thanks. Okay, you can see that the deployment is here. I think we really ran out of time with this exercise. So when you register, actually, let's do quick registration. We won't wait for the process to complete. However, record what happens after minutes. Wow, let's double check that. View. So let me explain you what happened. I created the view here. Deployment and then use
There's an index.
yes. Let's remove that guy. Deployment. This is ID index. Moment result. It contains the deploys and it's let's add. Okay. And then let's just make sure that this is deployment index deployment.
started the right. Is it the default one? Okay.
If right now it won't work, I think we'll get back to this after all content. Let's log in with. Okay. I don't know, probably some caching problem. So you can see in VMs, if I click create, and actually let's switch to the movie. It will show the whole process. After I register, I click on deploy, the list of deploy, and I click on the new one to see all the machines. Schedule a new deployment. Now our tooling is called in the background, and then you have a deployment completed. Of course, it's definitely much better idea to run on a separate thread. In this case, we speed it. Okay.
Yeah. So of course you can have a lot of fun building your own portal for deploying clouds, but what about using existing solutions? One of the, in case your organization is already using System Center, there is a solution for you that you can leverage. Here's this one. Have you heard about Windows Azure Packs? This is a set of tools released by Windows, the Azure team, that enables you to bring your Azure experience into your own data center. So if you don't know the details, let's go details and find out about the Windows Azure Pack. So Windows Azure Pack is, as I mentioned before, it delivers Windows Azure technologies to your center, on-premise data center. It offers rich self-service multi-tenant experience, and the most important thing is this pack comes for free for this one. It integrates well with System Center, and under the hood, it uses System Center Virtual Machine Manager for deploying virtual machines for sites, databases, and other services. The difference between Azure Portal is there's also for administrators, where you can go in and create, configure subscriptions for users. So we can enable different services for different teams. So why build this pack? It's because we have this vision that we want to deliver one standard platform experience, and this enables you to kind of join these two worlds, like Microsoft Cloud offer, Windows Private Data Center. What's the difference in Windows and Windows Azure Pack deployment? So see on the top, Windows Azure offers a subscriber service portal, where you can go in, log in, and manage your cloud. Azure Pack, you have this enter portal, and on top of that, you have this administrator where you can create users, you can create different services, you can different service providers, and the management API is from the cloud is moved to on-prem, and it's the same that it's using, and all those existing Windows Azure services, virtual machines, the websites, databases, all those services are moved to the cloud, and all this is utilized by System Center, the whole System Center package.
Yeah. And I'd like to add that Tomasz mentioned the same. And if you look at Azure commandlets, this is Azure PowerShell package module. You can actually see that there are more and more commandlets which work both on Azure and with Azure Pack on-prem. So we can see that what's happening is that the compatibility is kept for both platforms, for on-prem and cloud. So when that process there is a really nice chance that with limited changes, you'll call our commandlets against Azure. Already right now, commandlets like get Azure subnet, get Azure VM or new Azure can be also called against on-prem installation of Azure. So it's already happening. And you can see that the names of commandlets differ, but actually just alias pointing to the same logic within the DLL.
Yeah, thanks. So in order to build this solution on your on-premise infrastructure, you need a system center components. One of them is machine manager. Virtual machine manager is a tool that you can easily manage your physical and virtual infrastructure, networks, and now even gallery items, machine templates. And there's another service created which is called Service Provider Foundation. This is a service that interacts with Virtual Machine Manager and exposes services to cloud management portal. So through this portal, you can request, create new VMs and create new websites and so on. So let's how we can get there. What's there, right? So this portal, it's different than the one we have on cloud. It's you can customize it. You can add your specific content, specific service provider extension. I will show this later in demo. And leverage System Center for virtual machine management and create different images with your with NAV. Like when let's say if you are doing some deployments on customer when you have test site or training, then you can easily spin up very quickly an image from the gallery and you have environment up and running. And of course, you can leverage Orchestrator. We released NAV where you can actually monitor the health of NAV deployments. And as we talked before, you can also use Order, which is a tool that automates all scripting. You can create a workflow. You can create a basically that runs a number of scripts for you. So let's say you can create a random. Really have a call that it creates like 10 machines or more, depending. In my demo, before we go to demo, I would like to talk about my deployment, the local machine. So on one, I have this is a domain, and the second machine is virtual machine. It has a center installation of Virtual Machine Manager, Service Provider Foundation, and it also hosts a SQL Server. First machine front end, it's we have the Windows pack deployed. Of course, this is just it's not a recommended deployment scenario. You can find more information on MSDN how to deploy Azure for like large scale. And in this diagram, there's a NAV host, but I have everything running on my laptop, so I can't connect a physical machine to my environment. So there will be only 3 machines demo. Okay, so where can I connect?
There's remote desktop.
It was.
Sure.
Let's try again. Yes. Yeah, this one. Okay. Let's wait a minute. Where's the mouse? Okay.
Right now we are connecting our own due to some issues.
Let's go. Okay, so as you can see on my machine, I have 3 VMs running, one for System Center components, one for network and I'm already connected here. So this is a Windows Azure portal for administrators, and you can add items like VM clouds, NAV deployment, our custom extension. So this shows you how you can actually how you can build, how you can act this port with your specific needs. And in this portal, you can as well configure connection to your virtual machine manager, and we have one already connected. So in virtual, you can actually organize all the resources in clouds. So you can for each like customer or private for your deployments. You can create a different clouds, and different people will have different access. And this is here in kind of different plans. Maybe do we have time? Or maybe I will not create a plan. Have much time. Now I will actually go and show you tenant portal. So this is like similar to what you get.
And this is all hosted on our machines. Please don't be misled by the URL on-prem here.
Yeah. There is no network connection.
Exactly.
So I have some user here. Take some time. I think if I were using the proper deployment guidelines, it will run faster. Yeah. So this user has two plans added, like System Center and NAV deployment extension. So on this, we mentioned basically there is we can show here that you have the tenant administrator have a list of all the tenants he can have access to, and there is operation you can perform like or get info or add another one. And of course you can also, if you want to create dual machines, you can do it right from here. Currently I don't have any image loaded because of missing physical servers, but this is like very similar to sizing point of we have on Azure. So you can also, okay, let's go. Yeah, okay. So I think we don't have time to show you more. But go to the presentation URL in presentation and find out more about the Azure pack. The first version was released a year ago, and the latest version was released with Windows 2012 R2 release.
Yes, and with every version there are new resources support. For example, available only in Azure is already available as well.
Yeah, what I also mentioned that Azure Packs enables you to become a service provider, so you can also provide like NAV deployments for external organizations. I think there's a domain company that added extension for domain management. So from within this portal, you can and request a custom domain request.
Before we proceed, I'd like to show you the result of the deployment. If I see this. As you can see, it completed. It took quite some time. It completed 20. So let's access the click once. We'll skip the Windows client if it works and work on the other client. So here's the deployment. It just downloads the Windows. Actually, what happened right now is that I already had the click once with exactly the same content, the same files I deployed before this presentation. It already checked that it the same, it didn't update install, it just opened already existing one. And let's use the credentials. Which we never logged into.
Not this one.
Actually, I'll show you the content. You can also see right now that NAV is also installed with the web client. is running. So the whole solution, any click within the. Sorry for.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So that will be it for Azure Pack. So let's talking about our experience with how we were deploying NAV high scale for Converge US, and we're delivering 1,000 VMs, and for NAV workshop, which you can actually you can practice it here during this NAV TechDays. So why we did this? We wanted to get people ready for our coming releases, and we are releasing now even often every year. So we need to provide a great training experience, and having the ability to NAV online, and it's pretty good. And you can always take this your training home. Basically, in the traditional workshop environment, you just had 1 hour to try stuff out, but now actually you can go. You have all these materials, and you can try it later. So we are keeping VM for 2 weeks, so you can try, show your colleagues, and so this also it reduces infrastructure costs, and there are also some online resources that's made available on YouTube. So to build this service, our target was to create 1,000 VM in few hours. So this is how we had to design our service for this high deployments. So our service was using the provisioning tools for the NAV. It needs to be highly available, and deployment has to be parallelized. It has to run in multiple threads, and NAV image has to be optimized so we have a quicker deployments turnarounds. Now we actually optimize our process. So below here, you can at the bottom you can see how the duration of each operation, this advanced one, which you have in example 1 script, like create Azure VM. It takes around 12 minutes. And then the next operation is create VHD, upload it to Azure storage. It also takes time. And next operation, like install NAV and then instance. Altogether is like around more than half an hour. And we have to optimize this so it will faster for convergence and workshops. So for convergence, we eliminate one step, which was upload 5 VM. So an NAV DVD was already on the image. And then install on VM, commandlet was also optimized, so it leveraged existing data, which was on data disk. And for workshops, we decided that we are just going to just create Azure VM, and the template we think it will be the image for creating VM will have everything on it. NAV will be already pre-installed. The image will be sys-prepped. We have everything pre-installed, including Visual Studio, Office, and configurations, and so on.
And actually, by removing steps, we more or less remove the script elements, how-to calls. That wasn't really time-consuming. We are basically removing one of the steps, updating the template, plus all that work we had on the link, which will be on the next.
Yep. Okay, so for multi-threading, we had to take into account that each operation on the cloud service on Azure you can only have one thread at the time of creating operation cloud service. Like when you start creating VM, you might end up in a situation when you have some current calls. If you want to create a VM on the same, 2 different on the same hosting service. And, in case on convergence, for instance, we have to deliver 1,000 VM, but the Azure subscription cloud service limit is can extend it to 100, right?
Yes.
The default one is 20. So we decided that we'll keep everything in one subscription and have an optimization for this. And then, of course, each operation, like select subscription, has to be logged and executed by one thread at the time. creating the VHD files can only also can also be run by one thread at a time.
Yeah, plus we made some optimizations, like we attached the VHD from storage to the VM, so replicate that image dynamically and attach exact code to multiple VMs at the same time. And as Tomasz mentioned, there were of 100, I think, VMs per 100 cloud services. It doesn't mean you're limited to 100 VMs. You can have more than 20, more than 50. I think there's some high, just a limit of number of existing VMs within the cloud service, just so we're on the same page. So 100 is the limitation of the cloud service, which is a boundary holding multiple machines in this case.
So as you can see on the chart, for workshop, we can actually deliver like 300 VMs per hour in 4 threads. And so the end result of for convergence in March, we deliver 1,000 small VMs in less than 24 hours. And for workshop at directions, EMEA and US, the number of seats that were actually made available was around 650. And for workshops, we decided that we will create a medium VMs because it was a Visual Studio machine, so it required more resources. So machine needs to be more powerful.
And of course, we have more than you see that we can do 300 per hour, and you can see only 180, but we spare ones as well if we get more participants of the workshops, etc. This is just the number we keep on. Some of machines are turned off, and we also made some optimizations, like the machines are turned off to decrease size, to decrease the cost.
Yeah, you have to stop it and deallocate it. Then when machine is stopped and allocated, the Windows, you don't have to pair it. Then it doesn't cost.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, for the run the VM in the beginning of Azure VM feature, whether it was on or off, you were paying for that VM. But now there's capability of allocating the VM, which means the VM is stopped, its state is saved on the storage account, and you of course pay for the storage for transfer, but you don't pay anymore for the run. Why we make some optimizations in the system.
Yeah. But then you have to be careful when you start a machine again. It might detect some hardware changes because actually machine is being provisioned again, and you might need to like upload license to Office or create because it detects there's a in your environment. Okay, so for the front end, we decided that we create that we will create a website on Azure. And the website actually basically you have seen it, I guess. And I think we don't have any for demo, so I will not go to this website. But you can try. I think there's.
I think most of you have seen it, at least those of you who workshops.
For the thing, yeah. So yeah, that's the link. So.
Thank you very much, and sorry for keeping you longer than we should.
You have any questions? Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
My question on 2 machines. Yeah, is it to deploy NAV database, not on separate virtual machine, but directly on the Azure service?
But we are talking about, right?
Yes, I'm talking about Azure.
Okay, so our scripts expect that one of the specifying the configuration contains SQL pre-installed. We use SQL Server on Azure VM. That's the configuration, but of course you can modify this if you want. But if you run our SAMP, it will deploy 2 VMs, so we won't default the SQL database, or SQL Azure will use the SQL Server. That's our recommended set. Does it answer your question? I think you wanted to ask SQL Azure. I mean,
SQL Azure, yeah, without have second virtual SQL Server instance.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
of course we support a single machine. I mentioned that you can have a single SQL server with multiple databases, right? So in that case, the script. So on the second deployment on machine with the NAV, while you will keep reusing the one which already contains spaces. So of course it is possible that you can have a single. And the new machines you create contain on NAV product.
Thank you.
Guys, question for T-shirt? We won't say many more we have.
So I think they know.
I was wondering, is it already possible to use SQL Azure as a day server while deploying an AV on Windows VM?
So SQL Azure does not support Windows. You need to use authentication, and by default in our config file, some changes to enable that. That's why we don't use. I'm not sure. It of course depends on the solution you're using, but in all our documentation, in our script setup is using the SQL. This is the performance we were testing, and this is what we analyzed. So this is our official recommendation.
Is it that future Azure will be the database platform, and then the NAVs will run in App Fabric or something like that?
I'm sure we can talk much more about that plans. Sorry for that.
Do we get a team?
Definitely, if you think of SQL Azure, it's combo with what we have in platform. So, I mean, my biggest concern would be performance in that case. Because of problem on SQL, I'm sure you're aware of them. Any more questions? Yes?
When you were running the PowerShell script,
Yes?
you were running as an administrator.
Correct.
When you were running the website, doing the same thing, you were not muted. How is that handled? How can you run the website without an administrator?
I think it's some. Yeah, I think I did the app pool setup, and the default one was running as admin for the simplicity, so I don't need custom user and login, because I was using form authentication, not Windows authentication. So even though I would run the Visual Studio, I mean that probably wouldn't solve all the problems. My current user also didn't have access to a publish settings file. And actually the problem why I was running as administrator in the first. So the problem is the publish settings file. In the deployment that we use that file, it contains the private key you need to access your Azure subscription. So the Visual Studio was run which had access to that file while I was opening me, if you know what I mean. So as an admin, I anyway had the Visual Studio was running and had permissions to the file. And I mean, I can other problems. Probably I might introduce myself while running the demo. Of course, running as admin is the best, but I on lower, and then if there are issues, solve them.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Talking about the PowerShell integration with .NET, so it's quite good that it's possible to shell also basically through a website. Do you also think it's possible to run the script from within CAL?
So what you've seen, or maybe it was way too fast, I was creating a new object, things like run space, which are a normal .NET objects available in PowerShell library. So I don't see the reason it wouldn't.
Thanks.
We have one.
Yes. Do you plan to include a sample of PowerShell?
Okay, that's a good. So by default, in the 2 VM deployment, it's especially important deployment. We use work groups. We don't use the. However, Azure commandlet support adding to the domain automatically. There's definitely some room for improvement to introduce. However, it would require some changes in those smaller blocks. How to pieces, that would be a change, but it is doable. It is definitely doable. The commandlet responsible creating a new Azure VM has appropriate switches where you get the name and password for the domain administrator and the edit. The only step you might want to do yourself is domain controller. So first you would go and you would VM, install this promo, the Active Directory, and then use our scripts to deploy the VMs which would use that domain controller. After slides.
Does 2013 or just 2013 the PowerShell scripts?
Scripts and the tooling were added in 2013 feature pack 1.
Okay.
So you should use starting from that because as I said those are also changes in the product. So 2013 FP1 plus.
Okay. Can deploy 2013 NAV instances then.
Right.
With
make sure you use that build.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks. You're welcome. Unfortunately, no more t-shirts.
Just regarding samples, do you plan to samples for moving from production to pre-production and development and redo it, the cycling day-to-day management?
You mean to deploy on-prem while you test it and then to cloud out of the box?
Yeah.
If you could explain.
Just samples to when we create an environment, to copy it in order to make the pre-production and the development environment.
Okay, so one option that you make a backup of the database, plus if you add in put right next to the binaries, and then you call out to those artifacts. But we don't have anything like how to move. So that is something definitely you could create. I'm not aware of for such extension. I think quite hard, and the reason for that is that, for instance, we make some additional configurations. You cannot predict what kind of changes you made if you hosted it locally, and let's say you use some custom icon for it and other changes, that would be hard to figure out. But if you build, not non-modified build, or only with some add-ins, of course, database backup and use exactly the same build, same database, and our script would work then. We can discuss it often, so I understand fully the problem.
Do we have more questions? I think, yeah, that's it. Coming, and sorry for being late and delayed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Commandlet was also optimized so it leveraged existing data which was on data. And for workshops, we decided that we are just going to just create Azure VM, and the template it will be the image for creating VM will have everything on it. NAV will be already pre-installed. The image will be prepped. We have everything pre-installed, including Visual Studio, Office, and configurations, and so on.
And actually, by removing steps, we more or less remove the script elements, how to calls. That wasn't really time-consuming. We are basically removing one of the steps, updating the template, plus all that work we had on heading, which will be on the next.
Yep. Okay, so for multi-threading, we had to take into account that each operation on the cloud service on Azure you can only have one thread at the time of creating operation cloud service. Like when you start creating VM, you might end up in a situation when you have some current calls if you want to create a VM on the same, two different on the same hosting service. And, in case on convergence, for instance, we have to deliver 1,000 VM, but the Azure subscription cloud service limit is can extend it to 100, right?
Yes.
The default one is 20. So we decided that we'll keep everything in one subscription and have the optimization for this. And then, of course, each operation, like select subscription, has to be logged and executed by one thread at the time. And creating VHD files can only also can also be run by one thread at a time.
Yeah, plus we made some optimizations, like we attached the VHD from storage to the VM, so replicating that image dynamically and attached exact code to multiple VMs at the same time. And as Tomasz mentioned, there were of 100, I think, VMs per 100 cloud services. It doesn't mean you're limited to 100 VMs. You can have more than 20, more than 50. I think there is some high, just a limit of number of existing VMs within the cloud service, just so we are on the same page. So 100 is the limitation of the cloud service, which is a boundary holding multiple machines in this case.
So as you can see on the chart, for workshop, we can actually deliver like 300 VMs per hour in 4 threads. And so the end result of our for convergence in March, we deliver 1,000 small VMs in less than 24 hours. And for workshop at directions, EMEA and US, the number of seats that were actually made available was around 650. And for workshops, we decided that we will create a medium VMs because it was a Visual Studio machine, so it required more resources. So machine needs to be more powerful.
And of course, we have more than you see that we can do 300 per hour, and you can see only 180, but we spare once as well if we get more participants of the workshops, etc. This is just the number we keep on. Some of machines are turned off, and we also made some optimizations, like the machines are turned off to decrease size, to decrease the cost.
Yeah, you have to stop it and deallocate it. Then when machine is stopped and located, the Windows, you don't have to pair it. Then it doesn't cost.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, for the run the VM in the beginning of Azure VM feature, whether it was on or off, you were paying for that VM. But now there's capability of allocating the VM, which means the VM is stopped, its state is saved on the storage account, and you of course pay for the storage for transfer, but you don't pay anymore for the run. Why we make some optimizations in the system.
Yeah. But then you have to be careful when you start a machine again. It might detect some hardware changes because actually machine is being provisioned again, and you might need to like upload license to Office or create because it detects there's a in your environment. Okay, so for the front end, we decided that we create that we will create a website on Azure. And the website actually basically you have seen it, I guess. And I think we don't have any for demo, so I will not go to this website. But you can try. I think there's. Yeah, you can
I
see
think most of you have seen it, at least those of you who workshops.
For the thing, yeah. So yeah, that's the link. So.
Thank you very much,
Thank
and
you.
sorry for keeping you longer than we should.
Do you have any questions? Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
My question on 2 machines. Yeah, is it to deploy NAV database not on separate virtual machine but directly on the Azure service?
But we are talking about, right?
Yes, I'm talking about Azure.
Okay, so our scripts expect that one of the specifying the configuration contains SQL pre-installed. We use SQL Server on Azure VM. That's the configuration, but of course you can modify this if you want. But if you run our SAMP, it will deploy 2 VMs, so we won't default the SQL database, or SQL Azure will use the SQL Server. That's our recommended set. Does it answer your question? I think you wanted to ask SQL Azure. I mean,
SQL
all
Azure, yeah, without have second virtual SQL Server instance.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
of course we support a single machine. I mentioned that you can have a single SQL server with multiple databases, right? So in that case, I the script. So on the second deployment on machine with the NAV, while you will keep reusing the one which already contains spaces. So of course it is possible that you can have a single, and the new machines you create contain on NAV product.
Thank you.
Guys, question for T-shirt. We won't say many more we have.
So,
I think they know.
I was wondering, is it already possible to use SQL Azure as the server deploying an AV on Windows VM?
So SQL Azure does not support Windows. You need to use authentication, and by default in our config file some changes to enable that. That's why we don't use. I'm not sure. It of course depends on the solution you're using, but in all our documentation in our script setup is using the SQL. This is the performance we were testing, and this is what we analyzed. So this is our official recommendation.
Is it that future Azure will be the database platform, and then the NAVs will run in App Fabric or something like that.
I'm sure we can talk much more about that plans. Sorry for that.
Okay, we got a team.
Definitely, if you think of SQL Azure, it's compatible with what we have in platform. So, I mean, my biggest concern would be performance in that case. Because of problem on SQL, I'm sure you're aware of them. Any more questions? Yes? Yes? Correct.
Handled. How can you run the website without an administrator?
I think it's some. Yeah, I think I did the app pool setup, and the default one was running as admin for the simplicity, so I don't need custom user and login. Because I was using form authentication, not Windows authentication. So even though I would run the Visual Studio, I mean that probably wouldn't solve all the problems. My current user also didn't have access to a published settings file. And actually, the problem why I was running as administrator in the first. So the problem is the published settings file. In the deployment that we use that file, it contains the private key you need to access your Azure subscription. So the Visual Studio was run, which had access to that file, while I was opening me, if you know what I mean. So as an admin, I anyway held the Visual Studio was running and had permissions to the file. And I mean, I can other problems. Probably I might introduce myself while running the demo. Of course, running as admin is the best, but I on lower, and then if there are issues, solve them.
Yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Talking about the PowerShell integration with .NET. Sure, it's quite good that it's possible to also basically through a website. Do you also think it's possible to run scripts from within CAL?
So what you've seen, or maybe it was way too fast, I was creating a new object sense like run space, which are a normal .NET objects available in PowerShell library. So I don't see the reason it wouldn't.
Thanks.
We have one.
Yes. Do you plan to include a sample of PowerShell?
Okay, that's a good. So by default, in the 2 VM deployment, it's especially important deployment. We use workgroups. We don't use the. However, Azure commandlet support adding to the domain automatically. There's definitely some room for improvement to introduce. However, it would require some changes in those smaller blocks. How to pieces, that would be a change, but it is doable. It is definitely doable. The commandlet responsible creating a new Azure VM has appropriate switches where you get the name and password for the domain administrator and the edit. The only step you might want to do yourself is domain controller. So first you would go and you would VM, install this promo, the Active Directory, and then use our scripts to deploy the VMs which would use that domain controller. After slides.
Does 2013 or just 2013 the PowerShell scripts?
Scripts and the tooling were added in 2013 feature pack 1.
Okay.
So you should use starting from that because as I said those are also changes in the product. So 2013 FP1 plus.
Okay. Can deploy 2013 NAV instances then.
Right. Make sure you use that build.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks. You're welcome. Unfortunately, no more t-shirts.
Just regarding samples, do you plan to samples for moving from production to pre-production and development and redo it, the cycling of day-to-day management?
You mean to deploy on prem while you test it and then to cloud out of the box?
Yeah.
If you could explain.
Just samples to when we create environment
Mhm.
to copy it in order to make the pre-production and the development environment.
Okay. So one option that you make a backup of the database, plus if you add in you put right next to the binaries, and then you call out to those artifacts. But we don't have anything like how to move. So that is something definitely you could create. I'm not aware of for such extension. Yeah, I think quite hard, and the reason for that is that, for instance, we make some additional configurations. Cannot predict what kind of changes you made if you hosted it locally, and let's say you use some custom icon for it and other changes that would be hard to figure out. But if you build, not non-modified build, or only with some add-ins, of course, database backup and use exactly the same build, same database, and our script would work then. We can discuss it, so I understand fully the problem.
Do you have more questions? I think, yeah, that's it. Coming, and sorry for being late and delayed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Just regarding samples, do you plan to samples for moving from production to pre-production and development and redo it, the cycling day-to-day management?
You mean to deploy on prem while you test it and then to cloud out of the box? Or if you could explain.
Just samples to when we create an environment to copy it in order to make the pre-production and the development environment.
Okay. So one option that you make a backup of the database, plus if you add in put right next to the binaries, and then you call out to those artifacts. But we don't have anything like how to move. So that is something definitely you could create. I'm not aware of for such extension. Yeah, I think quite hard, and the reason for that is that, for instance, we make some additional configurations. Cannot predict what kind of changes you made if you hosted it locally, and let's say you use some custom icon for it and other changes that would be hard to figure out. But if you build, not non-modified build, or only with some add-ins, of course, database backup and use exactly the same build, same database, and our script would work then. We can discuss it, so I understand fully the problem.
Do you have more questions? I think, yeah, that's it. Coming, and sorry for being late and delayed.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.